Rowdy Reviews Family Guy, Foxy Lady. Coming this Friday to all Rowdy C Patreon supporters. It's easy to assume that critics everywhere hate everything that's current and firmly believe everything was better in days gone by. But I've noticed quite a few online reviewers are able to remove the nostalgia filter and give older material criticism when it's deserved. And this is definitely the case with older animation. It really shouldn't be surprising how poor animated television was for years, because until the mid-80s, TV just wasn't a great outlet for the medium. Animation has always been expensive and time-consuming, so when you're expected to produce multiple shows in a relatively short period of time, drop in quality in both production and story creation can be expected. To their credit, in the 60s we did get quite a few shows that had some good writing and comedy to offset the lower quality animation. But by the 70s, when cartoons had generally been accepted as only children's entertainment, pretty much all of the creators seemed to just stop caring. Even animated movies were dropping considerably, but it was most visible in television, and it just got worse into the early 80s. A lot of people think the bottom of the barrel was hit with the show I reviewed some months ago, where the Fonz and the Happy Days gang was given a completely ludicrous time travel setting. Just about everyone seemed to think you couldn't have had a more ridiculous, unbelievable concept using classic TV characters. To which the people at Filmation replied,
"Challenge accepted."
Yes, the studio that would eventually produce He-Man must have taken one look at Hanna-Barbera's debacle and thought, what could we possibly do that would be even dumber than turning Happy Days into Doctor Who? Oh, let's think for a minute here. How about turning Gilligan's Island into Lost in Space? Amazingly, this was the second Gilligan cartoon that Filmation created. The New Adventures of Gilligan aired on ABC in 1974, and for all intents seems to have been a direct continuation of the first series. I haven't really watched that show, but from what I've heard, its cancellation wasn't necessarily its own fault, as ABC severed ties with Filmation completely in '76 because of another absolute disaster they made called Uncle Croc's Block. And yeah, upon hearing what it was about, I'll probably check out Uncle Croc's Block one day. But for now, let's see how CBS didn't learn from its mistake with the Fonz as we finally look at Gilligan's Planet.
We've got a brand new story about the castaways.
We left our tiny island after years and months and days.
How do you manage to make something so pathetic that it doesn't even deserve saying you didn't even try? So the setting is that the castaways have built themselves a rocket ship and traveled into outer space and... No, that's it! I should stop this review right now! I mean, you can't go back from that! This has to be the dumbest premise for any show I've ever seen! I mean, at the very least, the Fonz and Richie didn't build a time machine. An alien from the future popped into their town and offered them a ride in hers. But now, we're supposed to believe that this band of 7 castaways who couldn't fix a hole in a boat managed to build a fully working rocket ship out of wood! This is the most absolute make-no-sense setting to throw rockets and space travel into, and I've seen Spoonies reviews of Ultima 1 and 2. You have crossed the point of no return on suspension of disbelief, and we haven't even begun watching an episode! The only thing that makes even a sliver of sense in this whole scenario is the idea that the castaways would want to go into space, because this did come out 4 years after the TV movie Rescue from Gilligan's Island, where the castaways finally did get off the island, only to end up back on there in the end, but that was after they realized how much society had changed and how tough it was for them to fit in, so yeah, I can kind of see them saying,
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
So as the first episode starts, we see that sure enough, the spaceship has crashed on a distant unknown planet. I'm sure the weather started getting rough in space as well. And they're all marooned while the professor tries to fix the ship. Dude, just hunt down the Robinson family and see if they can provide assistance, because I'm pretty damn sure this is the same planet they're stuck on. And yeah, they now have an alien pet, because as you all know, it was a law back then that every cartoon have a troublemaking little critter sidekick. I won't touch much on him because, to be perfectly honest, he's on the bottom of the rung as far as annoying sidekick characters go. Meanwhile, I'll get into more detail about the animation problems later, but I will say this is another case where the animators did do a good job with the likenesses of the characters. Well, except for...
If my muscles are listening, they'll think they're getting a real workout.
Ah, yes. Remember when Ginger looked like Jean Harlow? Okay, to be fair, this was an intentional change, and one that was in the previous cartoon as well. See, Tina Louise wanted nothing more to do with the show or the character of Ginger at all, so in addition to Dawn Wells voicing both Ginger and Marianne in this cartoon, the animators purposely made her into a platinum blonde to dodge any chance that Louise would sue them for using her likeness. And upon watching this cartoon, that was a damn smart move on their part. Now, there isn't much reason to go into many of the episodes in detail because, as is the case with most cartoons of this time, they're pretty much interchangeable. And I'm just assuming the episode order they're listed in on the DVD is the actual original air order. None of them have any real connection to the others, and I guess in that sense they're like the original show, but that's where the similarities end. Full disclosure, it's been a long time since I regularly watched Gilligan's Island, and I could only rewatch a handful of episodes and gloss over online episode guides in preparation for this review. But my recollection was that most of the episodes were about the castaways working together to either try and get home or thwart some danger that befell them on the island. In this show, at least the first few stories seem to be about one member of the castaways trying to cheat, trick, or otherwise take advantage of other members. For example, in the first episode, Gilligan finds a creature that will grant him his every wish. But instead of a hot blonde in a harem outfit, it's a robot that's voiced by the same person that would go on to voice Orko. So of course Gilligan has him do stupid stuff like make him able to hit baseballs longer than Babe Ruth until the professor finally says he should wish for their rocket to be fixed. But by then, Mr. Howell has become the robot's master by feeding him gold coins, so he has the robot build him an entire freaking city on the planet! I mean, what the hell, dude? What's the purpose of trying to start your own business empire on a planet where there's no one to do business with? Ugh. Anyway, by the end, Gilligan has regained control of the robot, but feels sorry for everything everyone made it do for them, so he wishes the robot was back on his home planet, and thus the robot disappears, leaving them all still stranded. And get this, not even the skipper gets mad at Gilligan for having done that, saying it was the right thing to do and that they'll get the rocket fixed eventually anyway. Yeah, it can't possibly be more difficult to fix a rocket ship than it was to fix a boat. Oh, and if you think this is to show how the Skipper is the voice of morality for this show, in the second episode, he has Gilligan dress up as an alien and pretend to attack the other castaways so Skipper can scare him off and thus make it look like he's doing his job of protecting everyone so he doesn't have to join in on the dishwashing. The Skipper brave and sure, except when it comes to dishpan hands. This contrast in tone would be bad enough, but then we have to deal with how the episodes are laid out. The animation quality is pretty standard for the early 80s, but the main problem is that in this show, it's slow and tedious. The quality of artwork may have been cheaper in the 60s, but at least then there were a lot of cases where good writing and pacing compensated for it. Here, the steps they took to save money are far more blatant and causing everything to drag. Very few of the characters move at all, and when they do, it's almost always slowly. And that's even more of a problem when you remember that the original show relied heavily on physical comedy. When the actual characters in live action are far more active than their animated counterparts, you have only begun to fail. There are so many cuts in these episodes that do almost nothing but pad out the runtime because apparently they couldn't write up enough dialogue for these characters.
What about your dishes, Skipper?
Women do dishes.
Skipper's thinking has even affected Bumper.
And I would definitely expect better than that when the writers for this show included Tom Rugger and Paul Dini. I know this had to be early in their careers, but come on, guys! Almost all the remaining episodes are just stock plots that every cartoon of that time period had. Cloning episode, check. Character gets superpowers episode, check. Shrinking and giant episodes, check. For criminy sake, the castaways on Lost didn't get into situations this ridiculous. Most of the time. I mean, the original show didn't have these ridiculous fantasy settings. Okay, there were at least 3 episodes where the characters had doppelgangers, and there was that time they found a jetpack, and when that meteor landed whose radiation was going to age them all by 50 years, and it never got this bad! I don't think I even need to tell you that the lone season the show got didn't end with them getting off the planet, although that would also make it no different from the original, I guess. I mean, how could they have trusted NASA to find them when they couldn't even rely on the Coast Guard in the original? But really, I can't even get that mad about this show, cause this thing was just depressingly bad. The fact that the setting is the most nonsensical I've ever seen is bad enough, but it's only compounded by how little effort was clearly put in, especially knowing that it had a talented writing staff and almost all the original cast back. The Happy Days and Dukes cartoons were absolutely ridiculous, but at least they tried to run with what they were given. This was a production that was completely mailed in and then got sent back postage due. And yet, amazingly, despite being a Filmation production, Time Warner has the distribution rights for this show and has released it in the Warner Archive collection when they don't have the rights to distribute the Happy Days cartoon that Hanna-Barbera actually produced. So even to this day, this show continues to produce one more bit of nonsense after the other. But yeah, Gilligan's Plan is another clear example about how not everything from the past is good. And by the same token, not everything that's currently being produced is necessarily bad. And amazingly, that can even apply to shows that are being repackaged, rebooted, or continued in some way. Next time on The Wrestling Mark Show, Rowdy reviews Saturday night's main event from 1987. Join Rowdy's Patreon to get the video now. Will be available on rowdyc.com and Manic Expression next Monday.